All right, welcome back. Some incredible new details in the Biden corruption scheme and the DOJ's mission to conceal it from the American people. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer revealing overseas payments to the Bidens could exceed $40 million, alleging that money was paid for 6 different policy decisions. 4 of those decisions made while Joe Biden allegedly was vice president of the United States. We're moving into what could be considered traitorous territory with this, especially if we're talking about countries that are adversarial to this nation. The Oversight Committee also uncovering new banking statements and suspicious activity reports that show more bank accounts, shell companies, and even more Biden family members involved in this obvious influence peddling scheme. And Congressman Comer is here with us now. And, sir, good to have you back on. We're talking money for actual policy decisions. Were any of these decisions potentially benefiting the Chinese Communist Party or adversarial countries?
I think so. I think they all were. But let's talk about China first, and there were other countries. But the thing that stands out in my mind is one of the first acts Joe Biden made as President of the United States is he canceled a thing called the China Initiative. And what that was the FBI had this investigation ongoing since the Obama administration at the request of university presidents all over America who were complaining that these Chinese students who were coming to the United States legally, who were paying full tuition, but they were stealing our intellectual property, stealing our research and development, and sending it back to China. They knew this. It was an elaborate spy ring. The university presidents wanted the FBI to try to crack down on it and end it. And one of the first things Joe Biden did was he ended it, and he said it was on the basis of racial profiling and discrimination. And the only person that benefited from that, the only country would be the Chinese Communist Party, because this is their way of not having to invest in research and development, and one way they stole our intellectual property from the universities. Even the most liberal Ivy League university presidents wanted something done about the theft taking place at our universities, but Joe Biden canceled it at the request of China.
So this is an action, obviously, while he was president of the United States. My question is, if we're alleging that money was paid, they didn't know that Joe was going to become president of the United States. Maybe, I do recall, though, there was something in the past, I'm trying to remember now, but there was something where Hunter was saying that his father was likely to be the next president of the United States and was selling on that.
That's right. And then if you go back to the WhatsApp message and things like that, China, the whole business model for the Bidens with CEFC was to try to help China gain access, to reduce the barriers of entry for China. Because after China bought into the Smithland food processing facility, the United States government really ramped up the barriers to entry for China. So one of the things, and you're going to hear someone in a deposition talk about this very soon, that the Bidens agreed to accept money from China for was to help them invest in the United States, invest in the energy industry, invest in manufacturing, invest in farmland, invest in anything that they could get their hands on because they had so much money and there were so many barriers to entry. So Joe Biden, when he was in the private sector, along with his son, this is the CEFC, which was the big guy. This was the 10% for the big guy. Their company was all about helping China take over the United States in as many investment deals as possible because the United States had barriers to entry. So these are the things the Bidens were doing in exchange for the money they were taking from the Chinese Communist Party.
We're getting into the territory of traitorous behavior. Mm-hmm. If you're taking money for the benefit of an adversarial nation, first my question is, what crime specifically is that? What is the charge for that? There better be something for that, because that is a despicable and highly unethical act. Well,
first of all, they're an unregistered foreign agent because they're clearly serving as essentially a lobbyist for China. And that's a huge violation. That was one of the things the IRS whistleblower said that the Bidens could have been prosecuted on, especially the president's son, was being an unregistered foreign agent. Then you have potential bribery, you have potential wire fraud, because none of this was being reported. You have money laundering because China didn't send the money directly to the Bidens. They laundered it through a bunch of shell companies. That's called racketeering. The charges go on and on and on. That's why it's so insulting that the U.S. attorney didn't do anything to Hunter Biden.
If you're the president and you're making policy decisions to benefit an adversary of the United States, there has to be a higher crime than bribery, than potentially bribery.
Well, I mean, it borders on treason, in my opinion. Joe Biden's not been honest about this. He won't explain what his family did to get the millions and millions of dollars. We're having to rely on interviews we've conducted with former associates. Now we're in the deposition phase of this investigation. So people are going to come in and have an opportunity under oath to tell the world exactly what the Bidens were doing to receive all this money and what role Joe played in it. And that's very important because Joe's always said he had no knowledge of it. And I think the American people are fixing to get an eye-opening experience as to what Joe was doing to help receive this money.
It's so much beyond just had no part in it. It's so much beyond that. That's just a blatant lie. We can all see that. Newsmax confirming this afternoon that Tony Bobulinski, a Biden business partner who was in on the deals with China, direct business partner of the Bidens, says Joe Biden was directly in on the dealings as well. He called David Weiss's office, the prosecutor in charge of the Hunter case, for years, asked if he could testify, says he was ignored, says they never even called him back. They didn't want to hear it. For everyone saying that Weiss is a Trump pick and, this is obviously a nothing burger because Weiss was a Trump pick, quite obvious that at this point that probably didn't matter, that perhaps his establishment or his allegiance was to the establishment or he was being undermined by his own team. But something is obviously going on there when they had no interest in talking to Tony Bobulinski, who worked with the Bidens in China.
You have the crime, and that's what the Bidens did to accept all the money, and you have the cover-up. But fortunately for the American people, with respect to Tony Bobulinski, very soon, Tony Bobulinski is going to have an opportunity to tell the American people just exactly what the Bidens did with China. And I think this is going to be alarming to every American. And this is a national security risk, and this is why we fear this president is compromised because of the millions and millions of dollars they've taken from the Chinese Communist Party.
It's such an astonishing story. Congressman Comer, always good to have you on, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.